Let's get some reaction to that reaction from David Locke, the Utah Jazz radio play-by-play voice. David, we appreciate the time as always. Are you more surprised by Gobert's omission from the team or his reaction today?
At all by his reaction. First of all, he's a very passionate guy. Moreover, the sad thing that everyone's missing out on is the first 7 minutes of that conversation that he'd had with all of us was one of the most thoughtful, interesting, intelligent conversations I've ever had with an NBA player. He was open about it. He talked about his personal legacy. He lost $1 million. He doesn't care. He was so well. He talked about the future of the game and the value of defense to young kids and what he could represent. It was an incredible conversation. I know his relationship with his mother, and that's what set him off. I was standing right there. I saw the tears begin to well the minute he mentioned his mom. They were very close. He's got 2 older siblings who are both much older, and he's talked to me numerous times about how his mom gave up everything she loved in life to let him go off to basketball camp, and I think that's what made him break up was the disappointment, frankly, for his mother.
Yeah. Was he the obvious choice among the couple of Utah players who had an argument for the Western Conference All-Star team?
It's a travesty that he's not on the All-Star game. I mean, it's just a joke. First of all, there are like 6 players in the NBA that the minute they're on your roster, you're a top 5 team, either offensively or defensively. And this guy's the greatest defensive player in the world. Teams take 5% less shots when he's on the floor in the restricted area. That's where every coach wants to take a shot, and they can't even get there because of him. His team is better when he's on the floor offensively by a large margin as well. He leads the league in dunks. You can try to tell me that that's not an offensive play. It's the #1 most highly sought after offensive play in the game. Defensively, this team was #1 in the league last year. It's #3 in the league this year. It's one of 5 teams to be in the second round of the playoffs the last 2 years. And there's only one key player on our team that was on that roster both the last years. And it was Rudy Gobert. It's a travesty. LaMarcus Aldridge, when he's on the floor, the Spurs are worse, both offensively and defensively. When Rudy Gobert and Karl Anthony Towns have been on the floor together this year, the Jazz have outscored the Timberwolves. When Rudy Gobert and Anthony Davis, Nate, never mind. Anthony Davis checked out at both those games and didn't play. When Rudy Gobert and LaMarcus Aldridge were on the floor this year, the Jazz outscored. And let me go with this one because this is the most important. When Rudy Gobert is on the floor, the Jazz defense is 7.5 points better than the league average. There are only 2 offensive players in the league that can say that. Steph Curry and Kevin Durant. The 14 Western Conference coaches that butchered this, it's a sign of ignorance and absolutely a lack of thoughtfulness in what value they should put in this game. It's terrible.
Hey, David, do you think Rudy Gobert should be an all-star?
I do. Hey, Wes, I'll tell you what. I actually am going to take it a step further. I think there's 5 guys he should be an all-star over. I really believe he's one of the 10 most impactful players in the league. Quinn Snyder, who might be the brightest coach in the league, has built the entire offense off his strengths. We don't value this, but he leads the league in screen assists. Sounds like, oh, well, that's a new metric. But if you really think about it, it really matters. Well, this is not a team that has players that can break anyone down. Donovan's the only one-on-one guy on the whole team, and yet he's opening up a whole team that's now average offensively, plus what his rolls to the basket do. Why do the Jazz get the most corner threes of anyone in the league? Because Rudy's rolling.
Yeah, no, it's Rudy's a terrific player, and it's interesting because if we look to last season, right, when Rudy missed a bunch of games, came back in the mid to kind of late part of January, and the Jazz go on an incredible run where we all know they finished 29-6 into like a great stretch. This year, they've had a little bit of a similar start, though you could argue that start was maybe a little bit of a sophomore slump for Donovan Mitchell. And then we know they had the toughest schedule, road and just opponent, at the early part of the year. But lately, they're 11-4. Do you see some sort of trigger or something happen in the last 15 games like we saw last season?
So there's 2 things, Wes. One is the schedule got way easier. The schedule to start the year was just one of the most brutal things I've ever experienced. So to be 500 in that stretch really wasn't surprising for anybody who was living it. And maybe this is the other part that has Quinn Snyder and Dennis Lindsey so upset from a Jazz standpoint about Rudy not making the All-Star team, is his commitment to the team. So last year, to get really technical here for a second, the Jazz defense was simply to have Rudy drop back, protect the rim, always stay between the roller and the ball, and try to protect that out. This year, with the increased shooting 5s and the increased players using the mid-range successfully, They've asked him to come up and play a little bit more to deny the three, to get into Jokic and force him to go 1 of 7 against us from 3 the other night, to switch out on players in a way that, frankly, asking the Defensive Player of the Year, who just got a max contract or close to change the way he's playing, and for the guy to say, you bet, if that helps the team, I'm willing to do it, and not be rewarded, it's pretty painful for the coach and the general manager.
David, I love you being an advocate for your guys. Really, I do. I love the passion. I'm with you on this. I'm actually miffed also at Donovan's snub. How can Quinn take these guys, take these snubs from the All-Star game, and turn this into something going forward to really propel them to through the last part of the season?
You know, I think that both those guys probably don't need that, and that's what makes them so terrific, is they both have a quest for greatness that's driven by a lot more than just simply, you know, an all-star snub. I think Rudy particularly had worked awfully hard for it and wanted that recognition. Donovan hopefully has that coming, but boy, Rex, I mean, you just cannot assume that a guy's going to get there one day. Donovan did not start the year great. I think Rudy's been more consistent all year long than Donovan. But boy, what Donovan has done in the since we played in Detroit, Quinn yanked him a minute into the second half, put him back in the game for the final 17 minutes of that game. He went over 30, and he's been averaging 30 ever since. And I believe the Jazz are about 12-2 or 12-3 in that stretch. He's been brilliant in the last 15 games. I'm not sure he was that great early, as great early in the year.
David Locke with an impassioned defense of the Defensive Player of the Year and the Utah Jazz. We appreciate the time. Good to talk to you as always.
I'm just going to laugh next time at training camp when Western Conference coaches talk about defense and how important it's going to be for their season.
I love it.